A very good evening and a warm welcome to each and everyone to the SESL YouTube Live channel. On behalf of our Director, Education and Principal, Mrs. Revati Srinivasan, it is a great pleasure and honor to introduce our guest for today. I'm happy to welcome the Principal of Global Indian International School, Singapore, Mrs. Melissa Maria. Today, she will be talking about grooming future generation into compassionate leaders who need to inculcate various attributes like respect, empathy, skill, and integrity. Besides her extensive experience in school education, our guest is a qualified assessor for the Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Award criteria, lead assessor for India assessing large manufacturing companies, and internal assessor for ISO, OHSAS, and Education Trust Singapore. We welcome you, ma'am, to Singhania School. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Anshika. And I know Tanya is also on line. So thank you firstly for the wonderful introduction. And I would like to say that it gives me immense joy when I see students at the helm of initiatives, especially like the one you're hosting today. So keep up the good work, Anshika and Tanya. Let me first start by sharing my screen. Before beginning to talk, I would first like to thank the Singhania School. I just had a brief conversation with Miss Revati Srinivasan. Thank you so much for having me. I've also been in touch with Miss Vaijanti, Miss Udaya, Ankit sir, as well as Mr. Brajesh. So thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to all of you. Over the years, as a school leader, I've had an opportunity to listen and read from great and inspiring leaders, some of whose lessons I would like to share today. And as I found myself assimilating and internalizing these powerful thoughts, I also questioned myself and, of course, came up with my own understanding of what leadership is all about. And through this platform, I will share some of my personal views as well as those lessons and points that I have picked along the way. Let me briefly share what the agenda of this conversation today will be. I have broken it up into 5 areas. I am going to briefly talk about what leadership is. The second one would be by Marshall Goldsmith. What does he say are the steps to develop yourself as a leader? Third, what is the role of trust as we develop our leadership skills? The last 2 are leadership at GIS, which is what I'm going to share about my school. And 5th, most importantly, what I believe are the attributes for tomorrow's leaders. Let me start with this first question. What do we think leadership is all about? In my journey, I've come across so many quotes, and I would like to begin by sharing the first one that I came across. And this was by, President of USA, Dwight Eisenhower, who said, "The essence of leadership is to get others to do something because they think you want it done and because they know it is worthwhile doing." And I reflected on this quote and I asked myself, as a leader, would I really want people to do things because I want them to do it or because I think it is worth doing? And as I thought this over, I came across another definition on leadership. And this was by Vishen Lakhiani, who said, leadership is getting people to become the best version of themselves. Now, this seemed to resonate a little more with what I thought leadership should be about. He goes on to say that every single person is blessed with genius, brilliance, potential for success, to be leaders. All they need is to be reminded of it. And to a large extent, I do agree. So the essential question then is, what do I think leadership is all about? For me, Leadership is not necessarily only a badge or a title or a designation or recognition, but it is an inherent passion and desire for an individual or a group of like minded people who come together to effect change for better. It could be to an existing situation or an environment that is undesirable or a pain point. So, for me, then, true leadership is exercising, reflecting, and acting. I believe that leadership calls for reflection and, most importantly, action. Leaders strive to act and change to better either themselves or the situation around them and make life and experiences comfortable, pleasant, and better for all. So, the next question then is, how do I develop myself as a leader? Recently, I was doing one course and I came across Marshall Goldsmith, who talks about this 8-step process of developing yourself as a leader, which I thought was pretty concise and doable, most importantly. What was it? The first thing he said is ask people around you, how can I be a better leader, manager, partner, team member? Ask questions. Then he went on to say, listen intently to the answers. Thirdly, he says, think about the input that they have given. What does it mean to you? Then he says, don't forget to thank them for sharing their valuable feedback with you. Then he says, respond positively when receiving input. What does this mean? Sometimes as leaders, we think that we know everything, or what is this person saying? But he suggests that we should receive that feedback positively and acknowledge that. Then he says, involve the people around you to support you for your change efforts. So if that's a desire you have, then involve people around you. This point is very interesting. He says, change isn't an academic exercise. He says, act on what you learn. Don't listen to it and forget about it. And the last one he says is that follow up regularly. Follow up on that act that you want to change. That's when you will develop your skill. He says the stakeholders around you also will notice that you have been taking their feedback. The other bit is on trust, building trust. And Michelle Lederman, she has very well explained that trust is something hard to define, yet we know it when we have it and when we don't. It is this confidence that we have in a person to complete a task or how he or she will respond in a given situation. And I immensely like the 4 points that she has put forward. She says that trust is the expectation of predictability. Every time you deal with a person or a leader you trust, you can expect the same behavior from that person. Trust is unwavering and consistent. Thirdly, trust is the foundation of connection with all. If people trust you, if you are able to cultivate that trust, you can find yourself connected. And lastly, most importantly for us as leaders, it is equated with a brand. It is equated with reputation. It is a promise that we make every time we are interacting with somebody. And the 4 pillars of trust, according to her, are being authentic, also being vulnerable, being transparent, and being consistent. And therefore, all our actions, even the micro actions on a daily basis, are built on building trust. Every leader needs to give trust and to get trust. Now, being the principal at the Global Indian International School Smart Campus Singapore has always propelled me to ask, what is it that we should do so that every student of ours can stand up to be the best version of himself or herself and take up a leadership role in the area that he or she wants to effect change in. So today I will share briefly with you, how do we nurture our students to be leaders, not only of today, but tomorrow. At GIIS, we have an extremely robust program to nurture leadership skills in our students right from the early age of 3 years until 18 years. And this is a very, very important part of our 9 GEMS pedagogic model. Firstly, we believe very, very strongly that leadership can be nurtured consciously by providing opportunities and platforms for visible demonstration of this potential. Tools can be taught to students in a systematic manner. Every student in our school is made part of a quality circle where they need to list down everyday concerns that they can encounter. Of course, the condition being that they are also responsible to look for a solution. Here we teach children the use of the nominal group technique, the Ishikawa or the fishbone diagram, finding the red X, finding solutions. Through this process, we see skills in leadership being nurtured. Not all become eventual leaders, but all have had that equal opportunity to have those skills sharpened or nurtured and to be part of the process of effecting change. Secondly, we have a very, very effective platform where we run on a regular basis the GIS Leadership Lecture Series, where eminent personalities from various walks of life share their journeys and stories with our students, thereby creating opportunity for students to be inspired as well as aspire towards different leadership roles, professions, and projects. We have had the privilege to host Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, the first Prime Minister of Singapore, Mr. Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister, late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, former President of India, sports personalities, musicians, actors, poets, conservationists, and the list goes on. These sessions take on an interactive format, with many of the leaders opening the floor to questions from the students. This active learning methodology has allowed our students to benefit directly from the knowledge and life experiences of all these eminent personalities. The other thing that we do is we have this Design for Change project, which is an annual event which allows students to work on things that matter to bring change in the world around them. So year on year, our children take up projects. Last project was on beating plastic. This one, they are taking on the COVID situation and on well-being this year. The next one what we do is we have introduced class and section-wise leadership positions right from kindergarten up to senior school. We have all kinds of positions ranging from very, very minuscule things like being a board monitor, or we have a welcome monitor who welcomes children coming to school. We have conservation monitors, we have green ambassadors, and so on, which are rotational positions and allow students to have a flavor of leadership. The next one at GIS, and a big one, is where leadership is celebrated. Our student council is felicitated at a very big event, and parents and stakeholders are all there applauding the grit and courage that our students, take up these positions and challenging roles in, because every student council member has to take up a meaningful project and work through the entire year by, having a plan and following the implementation, that put through a rigorous process. Sixth one, students are invited to share their proposals for projects that they would like to work on in the academic year. And, they pick up any process or a practice, or they suggest innovations, and they work for 6 to 8 months on that. And then we kind of, review the process. So all our efforts towards nurturing leadership in students can be summed up In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, he has said, do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. And that is what we encourage of our students. Pick up areas to work on where nobody else has worked. Pick up something to make a difference with. And that is what we keep encouraging our children to do. Now, coming to the next segment, which is an important one, is the attributes for leaders of tomorrow. And this is especially in a world that is evolving, which is actually very different from what it used to be when we were young students like you all. In order to talk about this, I am going to use the acronym RISE, because I believe we need to rise as leaders. Now, what does, the R stand for in RISE? I've picked up two attributes, where R stands for respect and resilience. And when we talk of respect, it would firstly mean respect for self and then respect for others. When I say respect for self, it would include being grateful for your endowments, thanking your creator for blessing you with talents and potentials and building your self-esteem around that, being confident, taking care of yourself to be balanced and to be happy. As a leader, you need to first take care of yourself. You need to be balanced. You need to be a happy person. Secondly, respect for others. This would include your surrounding, the property, other living things, and more importantly, respect for people. And when I say respect for people, it means people who might be different from you, physically, emotionally, intellectually, socially, or even culturally. Respect is an attribute that leaders must have in abundance. Like the famous Marilyn Monroe says, respect is one of life's greatest treasures. I mean, what does it all add up to if you don't have that? Let me come to the next R. R for resilience. The American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, or even significant sources of threat. Resilience involves being able to recover from difficulties or change, to function as well as before, and then move forward. Many refer to this as bouncing back from difficulties or challenges. Hence, leadership is always having the resilience to bounce back from setbacks. Personally, I follow the 24-hour mantra. Go through the experience and then snap out and move on. I must admit that it is not always possible, but then I do a lot of self-talk and bring myself to bounce back. Now the question is, how is this going to be possible? Guess it has to do something with our mindset. And how do we train our mindset? Now it is believed that having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is important, where even failures or criticisms do not faze us as leaders, but we learn to look at it as constructive and a stepping stone towards our goal. Let me go to the next letter I in the word rise. And here I talk about integrity and insight. What is integrity? Integrity is said to be the act of behaving honorably, even when no one is watching. People with integrity follow moral and ethical principles in all aspects of life. Integrity extends to professional areas at work, such as decision making, interacting with colleagues, and even while we serve others. At school, we focus on teaching our children academic integrity. It is a commitment that students have to make, even in the face of adversity, to 6 fundamental values: honesty, trust, fairness, respect, responsibility, and courage. At a young age, children have the ability to learn the importance of these 6 character traits. And at every given opportunity in the school, we emphasize the following points with our students and student leaders. We tell them to lead by example, exercise open communication, be accountable for your actions, report inappropriate, unethical behavior, be civil and respectful. Most importantly, exercise patience and emotional control. And I think this is true for all of us as leaders. This is not just talk for students, it is for us leaders to also practice. Let me come to the next I in the word rise, and that is insight. An important attribute for a leader is to be able to always re examine facts, challenge conventions and status quo. A leader always needs to listen and discern, always have a fresh perspective, and try and discover the underlying motivations that drive people and their actions. It's always easy to follow things as is given, as a convention. But a true leader extends himself or herself beyond what the naked eye can see, sifts through large amounts of data to arrive at concise and compelling findings that will drive action and make things better for the team or group who work with the leader. I now come to the next letter, S. S stands for skill development and self-assurance. Now, skill acquisition should create a value for yourself as a leader, as well as create a positive value for others. You know, Bill Jensen, he's a global speaker and thought leader, and he has listed a few such skills that I would like to share. Firstly, he talks about being a no authority leader. And what does this mean? He says, how can we make others do what is needed without coercing them to do it? Therefore, the question for all of us to ponder on is, should leaders use coercion to make things happen? Or is persuasion or a coaching approach better for team action? I like his second point, and I'm sure you will all like it too. He talks of dancing with the robots. Now, what does this mean? He says, in this world of technology and AI, a leader should learn to use these tools, and he should use them as effective teammates and not as competitors. The third point, Jensen makes is leaders must have supersized creativity. Leaders should look for solutions out of the box and move away from conventional problem solving. At school, I personally discourage terms like, it was always done like this, we followed this for years, all our past dealings, we had it done this way. These, I believe, become constraining and they stop us from exploring something different. The next point Jensen talks about, leaders must be insatiably curious. Curiosity should keep us leaders awake and on our toes at all times. The next one he says is leaders should have the skill of sense making. Always find ways to connect the dots. As leaders, look at the big picture always, make sense of that. Let's talk about his next point. He talks of courage. A leader needs to lose fears at a faster rate than ever before. A leader who doesn't question or who is not able to call a spade or crumbles under pressure will never be able to act. So courage is important for a leader. Another point he talks about is personal agility. And I think in this day and age, all the more, as a leader, I'm sure Revati ma'am will agree, all of us need to learn, unlearn, and learn again. The last one is from my side, and I personally think it's a very, very critical skill for a leader, and that is to learn from our failures. Accepting failure as a stepping stone for the next course of action. Forgiving ourselves, giving ourselves another chance to try again, to meet with our goals, rather than beating ourselves up and saying, oh my God, I failed, picking ourselves up and making that our stepping stone to reach our goal. Now, when we as leaders are able to sharpen our saw, like Stephen Covey says, with all the above skills that I've just mentioned, 8 of them, we reach the next S, and that is a sense of self-assurance. Confidence to face all the challenges and situations and thrive in a world that is emerging. Rightly said by Lolly Daskal, she's written the book, The Leadership Gap, where she says, self-assurance is reassuring others and reassuring yourself. Coming to the last letter, E, in the acronym RISE, is empathy and empowerment. I was recently listening to Andy Johnson, who is a leadership team and organizational coach with Price Associates. And he's currently working on his PhD in industrial and organizational psychology. And I heard him quote somebody else. He quoted Roman Karzaneric. And he said, empathy is the art of stepping imaginatively in the shoes of another person, understanding their feelings and perspectives, and using that understanding to guide your actions. And he's clearly differentiated it from sympathy. He says, sympathy is feeling sorry or taking pity on someone else. Sympathy views the other person from outside while remaining superior. Empathy feels the other person from inside as an equal. And Andy has given 2 great tips for all of us leaders and for our students who aspire to be leaders. He says, first way he says, we have to rewire our brain through compassion training. Practice mindful attention to other people's feelings and experiences. This is best accomplished experientially with other humans rather than merely reading books and learning. A leader, for example, could actively practice by paying attention to the experiences of those that they lead, focusing on staying in the moment and in the shoes of the other. And the second way he says we can actually improve our empathy is shortening empathic distance from others by getting to know them genuinely. Leverage our ability to be naturally curious about other people to help us learn more about them, to humanize them. For a leader, this may involve inviting someone we don't know for a cup of coffee or lunch and asking good questions about their life and experiences. He tells us as leaders, talk less, ask good questions, and listen attentively. And let me come to the last E. It's empowerment. I really, really like what Colin Powell says about empowerment. He says, it is a means for us leaders to include the team in decision making, to give them a participatory role which capitalizes on their expertise and judgment, and that increases their sense of both individual worth and commitment to the organization. As leaders, empowerment also demonstrates that we are good at listening and that we care about the input of everyone in the team. When we empower our team, we motivate them to row together and to increase the overall success of our mission. Empowering builds confidence in the capacity to execute collective mission and goals, establish essential truth and trust in an organization. And more importantly, it creates a second level of leadership that is necessary when we are not present on the scene so that the organization continues. Therefore, to all my listeners, just to sum up, a leader of tomorrow needs to have the following attributes so that he or she can rise to be one for tomorrow. I'd like to conclude by the quote which says, ultimately, leadership is not about glorious crowning acts. It's about keeping your team focused on a goal and motivated to do their best to achieve it, especially when the stakes are high and the consequences really matter. It is about laying the groundwork for others' success and then standing back and letting them shine. And finally, rightly said, leaders cannot create tomorrow's success with yesterday's strategies. They need to be curious about what they don't know and the assumptions that create them, what they already know, and also what they need to know for the future. Hence, they need to learn and be agile and also to change. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a wonderful session. So many wonderful things to learn for all of us. All in all, I can summarize as the leader one is one who sees more than the others see. They see farther than the others see. And of course, they see everything before the others see. So that was so wonderfully put forth, ma'am. So many things for all of us to learn out here. And the audience is also very intrigued and they're coming up with a lot of questions here. So one question is, ma'am, how do you get the team members to contribute equally on a vision? Because people in a team come from diverse backgrounds. Not everybody has the same training, not everybody has the same upbringing. So how is it that you motivate your team members in one stride that, okay, we have to move forward as a team with one vision? How important is that as a leader? If you can throw some light on that, we'll be really grateful.
Surely. I think alignment is very, very critical. So an organization always has a vision. At school for GIS, our vision is to be a global role model for teaching and learning. It just doesn't happen. Every one of us, right from the head to the lowest person, even say the guard at the security, needs to know what the vision of the school is. And this only happens through conversations and dialogues. So regular meets so that we are discussing what this vision means for each and every stakeholder. So these are annual exercises that we do. We have at our own level, we have leadership meets, teachers meet, students meet, and there's an annual review that happens of the vision. So I think, Brijesh, just to answer your question, we need to actually discuss, dissect, and bring everyone on the same platform. Ultimately, it's all about alignment. And more importantly, also, how do you interpret the vision? Do all of us understand the words of the vision in the same way? So, and this can only happen through dialogue.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much for the wonderful answer. So the audience who's watching out there, it's very important to align an individual's goals with the organization's goals. And that is when the alignment will come in. And as ma'am very correctly put, everybody has to know what the vision is and walk that path collectively towards the vision. Yes. Right? So yes. Leadership is all about managing teams, ma'am. And when you're working with teams, when you're working with people, conflicts are bound to happen. Right? So how important is it to manage those conflicts? What are the steps that a leader has to put into place for conflict resolution? And how do we usually keep personal conflicts out of professional conflicts? So that's a very important question from one of the audience members. So if you can just take us through that.
Absolutely brilliant question, because where there are people, there are views, there are opinions, and there'll always be differing ones. So as leaders, it is very critical that we listen to every input that comes in. And yes, in our team members, you'll have very strong-headed people who believe that their view is the correct one, should be followed. Now, personally, my way of dealing with it is always, running through the idea, talking of the pros and cons, and then working through a process of convincing why a particular idea may or may not be good. And if it is not in the interest of the students and not in the interest of the organization, then why should that idea not be followed through? So conflict resolution comes again through dialogue. But as a leader, you need to have that foresight to first understand whether this is something that is not going to benefit the organization. So personal egos need to be out of this. I strongly believe that all correct answers don't have to come from the leader. It can come from your team members.
Team as well, absolutely.
Have that graciousness to be accepting, to be listening attentively. And if there's a brilliant idea that comes, accept it. If there's an idea that is different from yours, because I don't want to be modest and say that leaders don't have the correct answers too. They do have. With their wisdom and their experience, they do have. And if you think that your idea is conflicting with somebody else, run through why your idea is better. Give all the pros and cons.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the audience, the answer is very simple for conflict resolution. Dissect, talk, communicate, analyze, and come out with a solution which is the best for the organization. Wonderfully put, ma'am. So moving to the next question. Sometimes, as they say, power corrupts and more power corrupts even more, So is there a thin line between being a leader and being a dictator, So how do you keep yourself humble? How do you keep yourself maintained to the ground so that the team looks up to you still as an inspiration rather than being afraid of that particular leader? So this is a very important trait, So how to take care of this in general? Because this usually happens in a lot of corporates is what people have seen over the course of their careers. So how important is it to have feet on ground as a leader?
I think it's absolutely required. Firstly, humility. It's a great sign. Not everyone have it, but it's a very important trait as well. Humility. And the second thing is, if you know for certain, that you are working towards a vision, you're working towards a goal. And in that, to be a true leader, rather, corruption and wrong practices have no place there, Now, I agree with you that sometimes power goes to the head, but as leaders and especially from a school setup, I think we have that discretion, we have that discernment to see where this is coming from. If it is something that is not in alignment, I repeat the word alignment again and again because I believe
it makes a lot of sense. Agreed.
Have that. So yes, I think when that happens, as a leader, we have to bring back ourselves to say that is not the path to be tread. We have to be humble. We need to be, looking at what is the correct thing. And if you're going on the wrong path, then there are people around you also that will kind of hold you and tell you, no, that's not the right way to do it.
Perfect. So very well put, ma'am. So again, another beautiful lesson for the audience out there. Leadership is all about who you are, not what you are. Right? Humility is the most important aspect to leadership. Carry the team along, carry the people along. Fantastic. And now, ma'am, comes a very interesting question. How do you keep the team motivated? Because motivation is something that doesn't last very long, very often. I'm sure the students who are watching this will also agree. One fine day the teacher comes in the classroom, motivates them to study. The motivation is usually there for the 8 to 10 days. Then again, it's back to square one sometimes. So same thing happens in the corporate lives as well. When people are working, there's a good motivation session that happens. When we were doing our MBA, we were told that motivation is like a soda bottle. The fizz is going to be there for some time and then it goes away. So how do we keep the team permanently motivated? It's a very interesting question from somebody from the audience there.
I think it's a very idealistic state to be in because, teams go through changes. There's dynamism in the team. But it is important to keep them motivated. Now, at least as a leader, what do? I'm personally involved in people's lives, because I feel that when the fundamental needs are met of people, needs for safety, security, recognition, when these love, affection, that you care for them. When these needs are met, people, your team, students, they are easily motivated. So, like I say, I get involved in people's life. I want to know what is happening. So this smile, the wishing, the greeting, my DP also says always happy. So
Wow.
the minute you have a bright smile on your face, you've already inspired somebody else to repeat that. So motivation
Absolutely.
stems from your needs being met. If in a school setup, your teachers who are burdened with the kind of work that they do, if you still acknowledge them, you recognize them for their worth, you care for them, I think they are motivated. Same with the students. So it is about being involved in people's life, you know.
Perfect. Thank you so much, ma'am. So, the audience, once again, two very beautiful outcomes. One is be involved with your team, know what they are going through, and help them grow through that, what they are going through. And second is, as ma'am very correctly put, keep smiling. That's very, very important, very, very crucial. The smile on the leader's face always motivates the team. There's nothing better than that. Absolutely.
You
Right?
know, Dinesh,
So, ma'am,
come in. I was talking to Miss Revati also. She also smiled
right.
a lot, Yeah, the
Oh
principal.
yes, ma'am. In fact, as you were talking through the whole session, we were connecting because we work with her on a day-to-day basis, and we could see most of the attributes we are going through. And yes, we have always seen a smile on her face, whatever be the situation. So that's one very good thing to have, ma'am.
Correct.
Absolutely. Ma'am, the next question says leadership is not only about leading; it's about creating more people who can lead. So what are your views on that? That true leaders don't create followers; they create more leaders. How important is it to create a second line, third line in the organization? How important is it? How crucial is it?
I think that is a line that I practice day in and day out. I believe in leadership of absence, you know, and I'll explain myself.
Right.
When I say leadership in absence is even when I'm not there on the scene, everything should work in complete sync. And that is how
Perfect.
I work in my setup. So whether I'm there or not there, things that have to happen should be happening and should be happening flawlessly. That can only happen
Perfect.
when we trust and we delegate and we train people.
Absolutely.
That's why I say, right, even when nobody is watching, you should be doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where the integrity attribute comes out very strongly.
Correct, correct. And so my team members, I've had so many occasions when I've had to travel on work, when important events have been happening in my school, and they have happened flawlessly. Once our chairman mentioned that I think you're becoming redundant, I took that as a fantastic compliment. For me, it was a huge compliment because my team did it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, as an old saying goes, ma'am, there was once a head of an organization who was told, questioned by someone, that what if we train our people and they leave the organization? So the leader responded beautifully, what if we don't train them and they stay in the organization? And it's more damaging. So it's
Absolutely.
very important, as you very correctly pointed out, to train people, create leaders, and leadership in absence is a very wonderful attribute to have, ma'am. Right? Now, ma'am, coming to the next aspect, feedback is a very integral part whenever we are working. Taking feedback from the team members. Many times, sensitive issues, these turn into sensitive issues. So, more than criticism, I would like to call it critique. I think that will be a more appropriate word to put it. How does a leader handle critique from his team members? It's very important to take feedback from time to time, right? So how to analyze that feedback, how to implement and make sure that there's an open door policy where people are willing to come to your cabin and talk to you. How important is it?
I think it's again, all the points that you're bringing up, Brijesh, are excellent points on leadership. Like I said, you have to be able to listen and separate that out from your ego.
Absolutely.
When we talk about critique, if that which comes in, that feedback that comes in is going to help the organization, help the students who are in your care, then you should be able to listen and take that in positively. The minute you know
Absolutely.
feedback is coming in not because you are terrible or you are bad or it has something to do with you, but that feedback is coming in to improve a situation, make it better. I think,
Perfect.
any sane leader will accept it with an open mind. And we have sessions in our
Perfect.
in my team meetings also where we go around the table asking, Like, it's not about what I say, it's about what the team wants at the end of it done, you know.
Right. Perfect, man. So that's a very wonderful way to put it. That whenever you're interacting, please take the feedback in the right sense. Make sure that it's for the betterment of the organization and implement that feedback so that people are open to come to talk to you. Wonderfully put, man. Right. Next question I have, but I think more or less that is done in the previous question. So I will ask one question of my own, ma'am, till we have the next question from the audience. Whom do you look up to for your leadership? Who's your inspiration, ma'am? Whom you aspire to be like? Or if you could share certain books on leadership that you keep reading, which are good for the audience also that can refer to.
Now, okay, first question, who do I look up to? There are so many people, because you keep learning from different people, different things, different attributes. You don't have one single person who has everything. So like I shared a couple of people's names in my presentation. These are people I've been listening to, reading about, and you pick up things from different people, because at the end of it, you need to be yourself. You can't be somebody else. So you pick up attributes from different leaders. So there are different people I have looked up to and learned from. Humility is learned from Mother Teresa, if you ask me, but I can't be her. I picked up one attribute from her.
Precisely.
Lee Kuan Yew was a down-to-earth leader. I mean, I have huge respect for him. I've picked that from him, that even the smallest thing on the road had to be cleared, so that who are walking.
Absolutely.
So as leaders, so these are my inspirations, but like I say, I pick up nuggets here and there, and that makes my personality.
Perfect. Beautiful answer, ma'am. Thank you so much for giving that insight into your leadership pattern. Next question, ma'am. They say learning never stops, curiosity is a very important aspect. How important is curiosity for a leader? Or how important is it to keep learning, ma'am?
I said it in my speech. Curiosity should keep us awake all the time. And on
a lighter note, ma'am, as long as the curiosity doesn't kill the cat.
Yes, I agree. So I think that discernment we should have, right? We should have that discernment. But no, we need to be curious. We have to be curious. Otherwise, we'll stagnate.
Absolutely.
We keep doing the same things over and over again because I did it 10 years back. I have to see what is out there that I can do differently. I can do better.
Perfect. In fact, ma'am, this is one of the philosophies of Revati ma'am, our leader. She says learning should never stop. You should be a lifelong learner, irrespective of age, irrespective of where you are, what position you have achieved in life. Correct. So yes, a special hat tip to her on that. Right. Yeah. Next question, ma'am. Trust is very important. They say a leader asks you to jump off a cliff. You should be ready to jump off a cliff in a minute. How important is it to build that trust, and how do you rather build that trust in a team? That's very crucial.
I repeat, I quoted Lederman actually, if you remember. I said, trust is built when your actions are consistent. Trust is built when for every time you would be behaving in the same way. Stress and trauma doesn't make you change. So trust is built over a period of time. When people observe that your behavior, your action, your response will be consistent, irrespective of what the situation around you is. That's when trust is built.
Absolutely.
I'm proud to say my team trusts me blindly. I'm happy about it. It's because I don't let them down, where it comes to trust. Yeah.
Right. And I think one more attribute here is action speaks more louder than the words. I guess what leaders do is sometimes more than enough to showcase the trust that they have on their team members, the kind of responsibilities that they delegate. I think that is where the source comes from as well. It emanates from there as well, ma'am. Right? Ma'am, you've spoken a lot about alignment. I would like to get a little bit of more in that detail, because in a group, there are people from different ideologies, different ideas, different backgrounds, very diverse at that. So can you just tell how do you build a strong core group, which, as I said, the ideologies may be different, but the vision is same, the path is same. How does that alignment come into practice is something very important on the ground. If you can throw some light on that.
See, in my own experience, people are very skilled, knowledgeable, and they have good ideas, strong ideas. Along the way, as we go, you will have people who are very good, but they are not aligned with the vision, you know. And
Right.
so you do your part of dialoguing, discussing, bringing them to show them what the path is. But as a leader, you also then have to sometimes do the terrible work of having some to go, letting them go because they are not
Perfect.
aligned. So, like
Perfect.
courage is important when you sense that somebody is not on the same path that you have created or the organization is walking on. You must have that courage then to say, well, I don't think we are on the same page. I don't think we are seeing it the same way. So I guess, perhaps this is not the place for you. So allowing some people to go if that alignment is not there is something that as leaders we need to do. And how do you bring that alignment, Rajesh? I think that was your question. It is having structure,
Perfect.
having structures within your school, or your organization, where
Right.
you get an opportunity to talk about
Right.
what that vision is. If you presume people
Right.
understand, then somewhere we are going wrong. Have structures within your organization so that regularly you are talking about that vision, you're interpreting that vision, you are listing down what the behaviors of that vision are. When you do that regularly,
Right.
you see alignment coming. And practice what you preach.
Perfect.
Most important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful mantra to live by. Practice what you preach, because eventually, as I said earlier, leadership is what people see, not what you say, right? So wonderfully, wonderfully put there, ma'am. Ma'am, one important thing, I'm sure leadership evolves over a period of time, and I think challenges play a very key role, very crucial role on how the leaders evolve over a period of time. They say real leadership actually comes out in a crisis, right? So how do you manage the team in a situation of crisis? How do you make them stand up to that particular challenge? And what is a leadership style? Because there are various leadership styles. If I go on a leadership grid and I try to plot, someone is 1-9, somebody is 9-1, somebody is 9-9 on various X and Y axis, right? So how do you bring out a 9-9 leadership when it comes to a challenging situation, man? That's most important.
So I'll talk about myself because I think that's the best example I can give. Crisis
Right.
comes up. But as a leader, I've always held a calm disposition. Even if there's a storm in my head going
Right.
around, I hold a calm disposition. I don't like too much of flutter. I take
Right.
time to analyze what the problem is, what the situation is. And when the team sees a calm leader, a composed leader, they are reassured, So
Right.
I think when we project that, yes, there is a problem, but no problem is unsurmountable. We will find a solution together, So that's when you
Perfect.
talk through with your team and say, this is and then, of course, being honest, being transparent, that we are in this crisis situation. Now, how can we all come out of it together? What can you do? What can I do? What are some of the things we can all do together to tide through this crisis? I think the more vulnerable you become, the more transparent you are, the more open you are,
Right.
you are able to resolve it.
Right.
Not
Perfect, ma'am.
panic,
Perfect. So
panic and run around and get all flustered and things like that. Maintain your calm.
absolutely. So dear audience members, two takeaways on this very important question. One is composure. I think there's no better example than Mahendra Singh Dhoni that we have seen personally. India as a cricket crazy nation, composed, calm in every situation, taking us to those World Cup wins. And second is transparency. Communicate openly, share, take feedback, ideas, and try to, as you very correctly put it, ma'am, no challenge is unsurmountable. You can overcome challenges as long as you're one as a team. Absolutely wonderfully put. Thank you so much for those words, ma'am. Right, ma'am. One important question. I would like. There's a small dichotomy here when it comes to thoughts. Right. One is if people say that you inherit a lot of leadership qualities, right? But then why do people don't turn out to be leaders all the time? What is it that makes one leader different from the other? Because if you're working in the same team, you're working under the same leader, then how do you have different attributes? I mean, that's the beauty of it if I see it in one aspect, that no two leaders should be the same, right? And why do you think that happens? What makes a leader different from the other?
See, there's this debate that always is spoken about: are leaders made or are they born? There's this, this
Right.
Conversation that always happens. Now, personally, I
Right.
believe that you can train people. There are certain skills
Right.
you can give in form of a training. But there is this
Right.
other bit which is inherent, wherein if you have that drive to change things for better, and
Right.
do it without, what should I say, without self-interest only. So what I'm
Right.
trying to say is that inherently, if you have this desire to change painful situations, pain points into pleasant experiences, and you do that without
Right.
the thought of the reward and getting some recognition in favor of that, then that
Perfect.
trait is there in you as a leader, and then you may need some skill
Right.
to be trained in. If you
Absolutely.
have both of these, you become a leader. If you have only
Right.
one of it, there may be a concern. So that could be the
Maybe a
difference.
concern.
See.
Absolutely. Beautiful, ma'am. It's all about balance is all I will say. So thank you so much for those answers, ma'am. We have many questions, but unfortunately, due to shortage of time, we would like to conclude here. So I will share my 3 takeaways with the audience today. One is leadership is not a position or a title. It is action and example, as ma'am very correctly put it. Second, great leaders will never tell you what to do. They will show you how it is done. You have to lead by example. And third, leaders are the ones who have that capacity to translate vision into reality, is what I have seen. Right. So to conclude, I would like to say a leader is the one who knows the way, shows the way, and most importantly, goes that particular way before asking someone else to travel the path. So thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful session. And as I said, I would like to do a special thank you to Revati ma'am here, because the attributes that we spoke about, we are living that, working that. And of course, to the whole fraternity in whole, the all principals, trustees, the way you all have handled this situation off late, the way the teachers have come out, taken charge due to the leadership of various schools. I think a special hat tip to all the leaders in the education fraternity out there. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would hand over to Tanya for the vote of thanks. Thank you for being on the platform and taking out time for us.
Thank you, Brijesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this enlightening session. It was truly interesting to learn about how inculcating certain values can help us become better individuals altogether. I'm sure you've inspired many students like myself by this extremely informative session. In today's times, it is very important to develop certain habits and inculcate values that help us become better leaders and aid our all-round development. On that note, thank you so much, ma'am, once again for this extremely insightful session. And to all our viewers, thank you so much for joining us on the SESL YouTube live channel. And before you log out of this platform, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to receive notifications whenever we go live. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day ahead.